I'm Anna Richardson, 28 years old, and up until recently, my life was a fairy tale. Or so I thought. The memory of my wedding day is still vivid in my mind. My family, although supportive, had reservations. Their biggest concern? Gregory Hartman, my husband, had been divorced once before, and his first marriage had barely lasted a year. Irreconcilable differences, they said. But I was in love, and love, I believed, could conquer all. My father's eyes were moist when he gave me away. "Be happy, Anna," he whispered, his voice laced with unspoken worries. "Gregory, she's in your hands now." Gregory had smiled, his confidence unwavering. "I won't let you down, sir," he had promised. But promises are like glass, easily shattered. This morning, like every morning since our wedding, I woke up to find Gregory's side of the bed cold and empty. I used to wake up earlier to prepare breakfast and see him off to work with a kiss. Now the kisses had stopped, and so had the warm goodbyes. "Gregory, breakfast is ready," I called out, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "Yeah," was all he grunted in response, not even glancing my way as he grabbed his coat and headed for the door. The difference was stark. Before marriage, Gregory was attentive, loving. Now he was like a stranger, a cold, distant figure occupying the same space, but sharing none of the warmth we once had. I tried to brush off the nagging feeling of unease. Maybe it's just the stress of his job, I told myself. But deep down, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. The turning point came today, in the most unexpected way. Gregory had left his phone on the kitchen table. Usually, I respected his privacy, but something compelled me to glance at the screen when it lit up with a new message. "Thanks for last night. Can't wait to see you again." The sender's name was Claire. A wave of nausea hit me as I stared at the message, the room spinning around me. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief coursing through me. This was it. The moment everything came crashing down. The man I loved, the man I had married, was not who I thought he was. I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips. All those times I had defended him, believed in him, and he was betraying me. My family's concerns, my friends' subtle warnings, everything made sense now. I knew what I had to do. The thought of divorce had crossed my mind before, but I had pushed it away, hoping things would get better. But not anymore. I couldn't live a lie. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, Gregory walked back in, having forgotten his phone. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, fear? It didn't matter. "Anna, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern that seemed so fake now. "Nothing," I replied, my voice steady. "Just thinking about how things change." He didn't press further, simply grabbing his phone and leaving. But in that moment, I made up my mind. I would confront him, and I would free myself from this sham of a marriage. Little did Gregory know, he had just pushed me to the edge, and I was ready to push back. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the computer screen. Work used to be a place of solace, a distraction from the growing troubles at home. But today it felt like a cage. My thoughts kept drifting back to Gregory, to that message from Claire, and to the love that once felt so real. It was here, in this very office, where I had first met Gregory Hartman. He was charming, confident, and his laughter was infectious. I remember how he would always find an excuse to pass by my desk, how our coffee breaks became frequent and longer. Back then, I was just Anna, an employee in my father's company, not the CEO's daughter. When Gregory found out about my family, I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he quickly masked it with a smile. "You're full of surprises, Anna," he had said. That moment made me believe he loved me for me, not for my background. But now, as I reflected on our past, I couldn't help but wonder if I had been naive. The Gregory I knew before our marriage was caring, attentive, and always put me first. The Gregory I lived with now was a stranger. "Anna, you okay?" My colleague Sarah peered at me with concern. "Just a bit distracted," I replied, forcing a smile. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind was in turmoil. Gregory's change was gradual but undeniable. He started coming home late, often missing dinner. Our conversations dwindled to monosyllables. His once warm embrace turned cold, and his kisses disappeared. But the worst part was his indifference. The way he would shrug off my attempts at conversation, the way he ignored my presence, it was like living with a ghost. "Anna, you've been different since you got married," Sarah had once commented. I brushed it off, not wanting to admit that my marriage was crumbling. Today, my denial was shattered. The evidence was there on Gregory's phone. The late nights, the lack of interest, it all made sense. He was having an affair. As the day came to an end, I packed my things and headed home. The house felt empty, just like my heart. I needed answers, and I needed to confront Gregory. When he finally came home, I was ready. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Gregory looked surprised but nodded. "What's wrong?" "It's about us, Gregory. About our marriage," I began. "I know about Claire." For a moment, Gregory looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then he composed himself. "Anna, I can explain," he started, but I raised my hand to stop him. "I don't want your excuses, Gregory. I want the truth. Why did you marry me? Was it ever real, or was it all just a game to you?" Gregory sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Anna, it's complicated." "No, it's simple. You lied, you cheated," I countered, the hurt evident in my voice. "We talked, or rather, I talked and Gregory listened. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but his words fell on deaf ears. The trust was broken, and with it, our marriage. That night, I made a decision. I would file for divorce. I couldn't stay in a loveless, deceitful marriage. I deserved better, and I was determined to get it. As I lay in bed alone in the darkness, I realized this was just the beginning. I had to brace myself for what was to come. But one thing was clear. I would not let Gregory Hartman ruin my life. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. It was a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in my heart. Today was the day I had decided to confront Gregory about everything. His infidelity, his indifference, the sham our marriage had become. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would say it. I needed him to understand the depth of my hurt, the betrayal I felt. But more than that, I needed closure. I needed to know why. As the day dragged on, my resolve only grew stronger. When Gregory finally came home, I was ready. I had prepared dinner, not as an act of reconciliation, but as a setting for our final conversation as husband and wife. "Gregory, we need to talk," I said firmly as we sat down. He looked up, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "What now, Anna?" "It's about us. About our marriage," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know about your affair with Claire. I saw the messages." For a moment, Gregory was silent. Then he let out a heavy sigh. "Anna, it's not what you think." "Then what is it, Gregory? Enlighten me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me since the day we got married." Gregory shifted uncomfortably. "It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I challenged, my voice rising slightly. Gregory looked at me, his expression hardening. "Fine. You want the truth? I was bored, Anna. Our marriage became a routine, and I needed something more. I felt as if I had been slapped." "So you decided to have an affair because you were bored?" "Yes, I guess I did," he admitted, his voice void of remorse. The pain in my chest was almost physical. "And what about our vows? What about everything we promised each other?" Gregory shrugged. "Things change, Anna. People change." I stared at him, my vision blurring with tears. This was not the man I married. This was someone else, someone cold and unrecognizable. "You know what, Gregory? I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who has so little regard for me, for our marriage. I want a divorce." Gregory's expression didn't change. "If that's what you want." It was said with such indifference, it stung more than any argument could. I had hoped for some sign of the man I once loved, some indication that he cared. But there was nothing. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The reality of what had transpired sunk in. I was going to be alone, divorced at 28. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was also a sense of relief. I was finally freeing myself from a loveless marriage. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and legal consultations. I moved back into my old room at my parents' house, seeking comfort in the familiarity of my childhood home. My father was supportive, though I could see the worry in his eyes. "You'll get through this, Anna," he assured me. "You're stronger than you think." And deep down, I knew he was right. This was not the end of my story. It was just a new beginning. A beginning where I could find myself again, away from the shadows of a marriage that was never meant to be. As I signed the last of the divorce papers, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for the future. The world outside seemed to carry on as usual, but for me, everything had changed. The finality of signing those divorce papers marked the end of a chapter in my life. A chapter filled with love turned sour, dreams turned to dust. In the weeks that followed, I found myself oscillating between relief and bouts of sadness. I had been so sure that Gregory was my forever, but now I was starting to rebuild my life without him. Despite the hurt, a part of me yearned for closure. I needed to understand why Gregory did what he did. Why he chose to betray our vows, our love. I needed answers, not for him, but for myself. Driven by this need, I decided to hire a private investigator. It was a drastic step, but the truth was worth it. The PI I hired was a seasoned professional, and within days, he had gathered enough evidence to paint a clear picture of Gregory's infidelity. The report was detailed, complete with timestamps and photographs. It showed Gregory and Claire, his co-worker, together at various locations, their body language unmistakably intimate. My heart ached as I looked at the images, but it also solidified my decision to leave him. Armed with this evidence, I confronted Gregory again. This time, there was no dinner, no pretense of civility. We met in a neutral location, a quiet park where the autumn leaves painted the ground in hues of orange and brown. "Gregory, look at these," I said, handing him the folder of evidence. He flipped through it, his face unreadable. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. "What do you want, Anna?" "I want you to admit it," I said, my voice firm. "Admit that you cheated, that our marriage was a lie to you." Gregory sighed, closing the folder. "Yes, I cheated, but our marriage wasn't a lie, Anna. I just needed more." His confession, though expected, still hurt. "More? I gave you everything, Gregory. I loved you with all my heart. And I appreciated that," he said, almost too casually. "But sometimes love isn't enough." His words cut deep, but they also brought clarity. This was who Gregory was, a man for whom love was a convenience, not a commitment. "I hope one day you realize what you've lost," I said, standing up. "Goodbye, Gregory." As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. I had loved Gregory with all I had, but now I was ready to let go. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. In the days that followed, I dove into work, finding solace in the routine. My colleagues, sensing the change, offered support in their own ways. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. It was the private investigator. "Miss Richardson, there's something you need to see," he said, his tone serious. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed to meet him. What he showed me next was the last piece of the puzzle, the final blow to any lingering feelings I had for Gregory. It wasn't just about infidelity. Gregory had been planning to leave me long before our marriage crumbled. He had been manipulating me, using me, all along. The evidence was irrefutable, and it shattered any remaining illusions I had about him. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that this was truly the end. There would be no more tears for Gregory Hartman. He had made his choices, and now I was making mine. I chose to move forward, to heal, and to find happiness again. Gregory was a part of my past, but he would not define my future. The chill of the early morning air was a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. Today was the day I would confront Gregory and Claire together. I had arranged a meeting under the guise of finalizing our divorce proceedings, but my true intent was to expose the web of lies and deceit they had woven. As I walked into the cafe where we agreed to meet, I saw them sitting together, looking uncomfortably close. Gregory noticed me first, his eyes widening slightly. Claire, younger and seemingly oblivious to the gravity of the situation, gave me a disdainful look. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I think it's important we all understand the situation clearly." Gregory cleared his throat. "Anna, I've already agreed to the divorce terms. There's no need for further discussion." I smiled, a bitter, humorless smile. "It's not about the divorce, Gregory. It's about the truth." I turned to Claire. "Did he tell you that he was planning to leave me from the start? That our marriage was just a convenience for him?" Claire's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "What are you talking about? We're in love." "In love?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Is that what he told you? Because that's what he told me too." Gregory's face was a mask of frustration. "Anna, this isn't necessary." "Oh, but it is," I countered. "You see, I've learned a lot these past few weeks, about both of you." I laid out the evidence the private investigator had gathered, photos, messages, all painting a clear picture of their affair. But more than that, the evidence showed how calculated Gregory had been, how he had used me, used his position at my father's company to further his own agenda. Claire's face paled as she looked through the evidence. This isn't what you told me, Gregory. Gregory was silent, his usual eloquence gone. He had been exposed, and he knew it. You see, Claire, Gregory is a master at manipulation, I said, my voice cold. He doesn't love, he uses people. And once he's done, he discards them. Claire looked between me and Gregory, her expression one of dawning realization and horror. And you, Gregory, I turned to him, you've lost everything. Your wife, your lover, your position at the company. Was it worth it? Gregory's gaze was unfocused, his usual composure shattered. I didn't think. That's right. You didn't think, I interrupted. You didn't think about the consequences, about the people you hurt, but now you have to live with those choices. With that, I stood up, my heart still aching, but my spirit unbroken. Goodbye, Gregory. I hope one day you understand the damage you've done. As I walked out of the cafe, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm, golden light on the world. It was a new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of peace. Gregory and Claire's voices faded behind me, their words inconsequential. I was moving on, leaving the past and its pain behind. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, ready to rebuild my life, one step at a time. In the days that followed the cafe confrontation, a sense of calm settled over me. It was as if facing Gregory and Claire, seeing their reactions to the truth, had lifted a heavy burden from my shoulders. My heartache didn't vanish, but it transformed, becoming a source of strength rather than a weakness. The legal proceedings for the divorce moved quickly, given the evidence of Gregory's infidelity. It was a straightforward case, and soon I was officially free from the man who had turned my life upside down. Along with the decree came a sense of vindication. Gregory was ordered to pay a significant sum in alimony. It wasn't about the money for me, it was about him facing the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, Claire faced her own repercussions. Word of the affair and the evidence I had gathered spread through the company. Claire's parents, deeply embarrassed by their daughter's involvement in such a scandal, reprimanded her severely. Her colleagues, who once respected her, now looked at her with disdain. She offered her resignation, unable to bear the weight of judgmental stares and whispers. As for Gregory, his downfall was swift and severe. My father, upon learning the full extent of his betrayal, was furious. He had welcomed Gregory into our family, into his company, only to be repaid with deceit. There was talk of firing him, but before any official action could be taken, Gregory resigned. The shame and guilt were too much for him to bear. I watched these events unfold from a distance, feeling a mix of pity and relief. Pity for the pathetic end to Gregory's schemes, and relief that I was no longer part of his twisted world. My family was my rock during this time. They welcomed me back with open arms, offering comfort and support as I healed. My job at the company provided a much-needed distraction, and my colleagues' kindness reminded me that I wasn't alone in this journey. Life was slowly getting back on track. I found joy in small things: coffee with friends, quiet evenings with my family, the sense of accomplishment after a productive day at work. The pain of the past was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my father joined me. He put an arm around my shoulders, a silent show of support. "You've handled everything with such grace, Anna," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." I leaned into his embrace, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you and Mom. You're stronger than you think, Anna. And remember, this experience doesn't define you. It's just a part of your story." He was right. This experience, as painful as it was, had taught me a lot about myself, about resilience and forgiveness. It was a part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. As the sky turned a deep shade of orange, I made a silent vow to myself. I would move forward, embrace life, and open my heart to new possibilities. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. The days turned into weeks, and slowly the scars of my past began to heal. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt and pangs of loneliness, but with each passing day, I grew stronger, more resilient. My life had taken an unexpected turn, and in the process, I had discovered a strength I never knew I had. The experience with Gregory, as painful as it was, taught me invaluable lessons about trust, love, and self-worth. I learned that love should never be taken for granted, nor should it be a one-sided sacrifice. I understood the importance of mutual respect and the courage it takes to walk away from a situation that no longer serves you. Most importantly, I realized that my happiness and well-being were in my own hands. As I moved forward, I found comfort in my work, joy in the company of friends and family, and peace in my own solitude. The world, once gray and bleak, was now full of color and possibilities. Occasionally, I would hear news about Gregory. He had moved to another city, a shadow of the man he once was. There was a part of me that felt sorry for him, but I knew that our paths were never meant to cross again. Claire, too, had moved on, finding a new job in a different company. I hoped that she, too, would learn from this experience and find a better path in life. One evening, while sipping tea in my favorite cafe, a thought struck me. This was where Gregory and I had our first date, where our story began. It felt like a lifetime ago, a chapter from a different book. Yet here I was, not broken or bitter, but wiser and more whole than I had ever been. As I looked out the window, watching people go about their lives, I realized that life was full of second chances. It was never too late to start anew, to write a new story. And maybe, just maybe, love would find me again. But this time, I would be ready. I would enter it with open eyes, a strong heart, and the wisdom gained from my past. The cafe door chimed, and a burst of laughter filled the room. Life was moving on, and so was I. With a smile, I turned my gaze back to the bustling street, my heart filled with hope for what the future might hold.